Welcome to Crypt of Fright. I'm Luna, your guide through the shadows where horror films, TV, comics, and video games all come out to play. Every week, we dig into the stories that shape the genre. The monsters who haunt it, and the creators who keep horror alive. Welcome to the Crypt. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm joined today by Thomas A. Fowler. Thomas is a multi-talented filmmaker and writer. He has a deep focus for emotional storytelling, especially focusing on fantastic world building. He also does horror comedy, and we have some great angles to explore with him. How are you today, Thomas?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I am doing awesome. So before we kind of get started into Thomas A. Fowler and who you are as a writer and creative, let's go back to the very beginning before we kind of get into the nitty gritty. What was your first introduction to horror?
I don't know if it was my very first, but the one that comes to mind is Poltergeist. Primarily just because I saw it way too early. And two, the scene with the clown particularly got me because at my grandma on my mom's side, at her house, she had a creepy statue of Bing Crosby, and the head was way too big. Like, it was disproportionately huge compared to the rest of the body. And he was on a bicycle or a unicorn or a unicycle or something. And so I swore after I saw Poltergeist that that Bing Crosby statue was going to come to life and come after me. That at some point at night I would just hear like a, "Hey buddy, how's it going?" Or something. And then he'd just start crooning while he's murdering me. I don't know.
Wow, that is very your imagination was very good, even in that time, I would say. Very vivid imaginations is very good for writing.
Yeah,
as I've come to discover.
It stuck around because I remember after I saw Jaws too young, I didn't go into our pool because at the time we lived in South Carolina, and I was scared that a shark was going to somehow get up through the drain and into our pool. So,
yeah, that's as a child, that is very possible, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, we have a question in the house by my good buddy Chris. What is Thomas's favorite horror movie director, and which of their films is his favorite?
It's hard to pinpoint a single director because some of my favorite directors are also ones who like jump genres. Like Edgar Wright would obviously be Shaun of the Dead as far as horror goes, but Hot Fuzz is his favorite movie of mine altogether, right? So I'd say if it's consistent horror, I'm going to go Jordan Peele, and I would have to say Us. Just because Get Out was amazing for me, but Us was just so incredible in terms of the concept of this family that is dressed exactly like you, looks exactly like you, but is just off, with the father grunting and groaning.
Yeah.
And because I am a father of kids too, like, it's just one of those things that like my own vicarious living really got shaken up, shaken up by that movie. And then another one of my old classic favorite horror directors is Hitchcock, and I would say The Birds, just because I have a very big fond memory of that as a kid. And it didn't scar me like Poltergeist or Jaws did. Like, I didn't look at birds and just suddenly go like, which is weird because I have actually had some close encounters with birds. Like, I was at NASA and one just flew right at my face when I was eating a French fry. Like, I was mid, like, bite. So, but there you go.
Very cool choice. Thanks.
Yeah,
I actually had a run-in with the bird too. I was at Hollywood Forever.
Okay.
It's an awesome cemetery. While I was walking through the pool that they had there, they have an awesome. It's not a pool. It's more like a lagoon lake.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, this geese comes and starts attacking me, and I was I love animals. I could never hurt an animal. I was trying gently to like get him off of me and he refused. So this freaking goose literally drew blood from my leg.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, geese are very very rough and territorial. So don't walk
Yep.
near their pond because they will come after you.
Yep. Yeah, my sister got bit at a place down in Colorado Springs once because, yeah, she was just apparently too close. But thankfully it was winter, so she was wearing like, big gloves and stuff. So gave at least a little bit of padding to the impact. So
Yeah, there I was at a graveyard, if you can picture it, just bleeding all over the place. I'm like, fuck.
yeah.
These I'm gonna reanimate these bodies with my fresh blood dripping onto them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, horror minded brain. I'm like, don't bleed on the bodies.
Yeah, get yourself into a Return of the Living Dead situation, right?
Exactly. So I know Chris already asked who your favorite horror creators are. What about your horror creator writers?
Oh, writing. Oh, geez. Oh, man. That's a very good question because as far it's a lot of single movies as opposed to like the same thing. Because I mentioned like I like a lot of directors who jump genres because I do that myself as a writer. So a lot of my favorites do that. And one of them that I can think of is the guy who did The Host in Parasite. Because The
Oh
Host is
yeah.
such an intelligently written script in the sense of how it
Mm-hmm.
puts together the main character's story, but also has messages about the government's like inability to respond and then trying to cover it up. And they end up taking the family in hostage, all the way down to just the insanity of the monster showing up, like that first sequence right there on like the river when it's starting to go in and out of places, and you see it all from the dad's perspective when he's just trying to hide and things like that. And I was really grateful because I went to Los Angeles just over the holidays, and the Academy had an exhibit dedicated directly to like Bong Joon-ho, and so they had like a replica of the creature from The Host and everything, and storyboards. It was so fun. So
That
that's
sounds really cool.
yeah, that's definitely one I would geek out about. Yeah, and then like recent examples, I was very impressed by the writing in Obsession and Backrooms, but more
Mm.
like with the atmosphere creation of it as well. Just because I am curious to see what those screenplays look like, because I feel like they're going to be very short. There's not a lot that happens, in terms of how you write it on the page, but there could be if you were to describe it like you're writing a book. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what those screenplays look like. I read screenplays all the time. Like this whole shelf right there is all scripts.
Wow.
So I love to read those, and I'll watch the movie and compare and
And
see.
kind of, yeah, see if they had the vision that you saw in your head from reading it, see if they interpreted the way you saw it in your head, kind of.
Yep. Yeah, because going back to Jordan Peele, I've got both Get Out and Us. Like there's a collector's edition of the screenplays for those. And they are very close in terms of the pages, in terms of what was written versus what you see on screen. Whereas you see some other scripts, these are not horror examples, but Truman Show and Little Miss Sunshine. Those have a lot of deleted scenes, a lot of moments that didn't make the final cut, and even like an alternate ending that wasn't part of the final film. So it's really cool experiment I encourage, especially for screenwriters, is to like find scripts, because you can also find a lot of PDFs of them online now for free. Like I know a lot of directors and stuff will even just put it up just so that way people can see it. So
Yeah, that is very, very true. We have Birds Are Terrifying, Jurassic Park. Yeah, dinosaurs in disguise. Oh yes, very,
yep.
very true. I do. Oh, I do definitely sympathize with that statement about the dinosaurs in disguise.
Yep.
So, was there a particular moment, Thomas, when you realized that horror wasn't just something that you enjoyed either watching or reading, but something you wanted to create?
Yeah. Initially, it was more of a decision about sci-fi, but it's funny because the one that did it for me was Jurassic Park, which has a lot of horror in it. Like, I mean, my best friend, we went to an anniversary screening of the movie, and when we got out, she said, like, that's my favorite scary movie because she doesn't do horror at all. My best friend did.
Yeah.
And, you know, it does have a lot of horror elements to it. And I distinctly remember, this is where I'll age myself because I was 11 years old when it came out. And so I got to see it at the mall. And then I went over to a Walden Books when I saw it was based on the book by Michael Crichton, you know, and read the book. And so that kind of like got me diving into the world of horror. It was also sci-fi adjacent. You know, it's always been one of my favorites. Because then as I dove in, you know, like you read the book of Congo, which is terrifying. The movie is not. But the book is terrifying by Michael Crichton for Congo, just in terms of how the apes behave. And then, you know, as I got older, I was in high school when Blair Witch came out, and then Event Horizon. And that was one of the movies that really got me unsettled, with just that atmospheric science fiction tension from Event Horizon. And that was around the time when I started writing one-act plays, because I was in theater at the time in high school. And I knew that I was wanting to write more. So I was starting to write some one-act plays and look into it. And, you know, and then in college, I kind of went nuts on horror because I wasn't with my family. My family's, God bless my sister, she can't take it. So I love her to death.
Aww.
Yeah. We watch Silence of the Lambs, and if I even start an Anthony Hopkins impression, she's out. So.
Oh, hey, horror is not for everybody, and so are comedies, and so are rom-coms, and different genres for different people. And I'm glad that we have that diversity within even just families. It makes things interesting.
Yep, precisely.
So you've explored a fascinating premise in slasher sessions, taking iconic horror figures. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a short film that I directed in 2024, and we hit the festival circuit with it. Basically, it's envisioning what would happen if slashers that you knew had to sit down in group therapy. I created original slashers because I didn't want to deal with the rights or like not making any money because it's a fan film or anything like that. I wanted this to become something bigger. So I have watched so many slasher movies and horror movies that like I kind of picked the subgenres. So we've got Chasm, which is sort of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre type, or the Wrong Turn, you know, hillbilly group. And then we've got Fear Form, which is a combination of like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho meets Freddy Krueger, the more psychological, get in your head and play with you kind of type. And it's really fun. And I'm actually just starting to rework it, because the more that the cast and I have talked, we want to actually make it a streaming series versus a film, because I have a feature film screenplay for it. But we want to like explore individual therapy sessions, maybe do flashbacks to when they were slashers, really dive into the characters more. And I think if we do it as a streaming series, it's going to really let us dive
play
in
a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually in a re-edit right now of slasher sessions, trying to take it from a short film that's a proof of concept for a feature to actually a streaming series. So I've got a little bit more of an elaborate intro and allowing a few other side clips to kind of pop in here and there too. Just that way we can flesh out the characters a little more, because previously we were also trying to hit a time limit for festivals. And this time I'm just letting the story be the story. So
yeah, definitely. So that is a very peculiar idea of, you know, slashers going into a group therapy kind of session. What drew you to the idea of humanizing or having people care for characters who are traditionally defined by their, you know, their brutality, etc.?
Yeah, for me, it was primarily because I thought of the idea during the pandemic. And I was going to therapy at the time because I was just high stress. I was getting late. I got laid off twice from jobs. And you know, at the time, my wife was a stay-at-home mom because that's just what she wanted to do. And she would have spent her entire job as a teacher paying for daycare. So I had to kind of scramble. So I was in therapy at the time. And I was blitzing through the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I just thought, like, yeah, some of these guys just need some help. Kind of thing. If they had some help like earlier on in life, maybe they would have been okay. And that kind of where it sparked that simple concept of like, oh, slashers in therapy. That's fun. I want to explore that. I would like to write that. And so then I just started thinking of, okay, who do I want to put in the room? And because so many slashers are silent, I thought that would be an interesting challenge, because 3 of the 5 slashers that are in therapy in the short that we've made don't speak. Because, you think about it, Jason doesn't talk, Michael doesn't talk.
No.
Often, you're lucky if you get anything out of Leatherface besides grunts and screams. So, reading
The only
okay.
one that talks and is freaking hilarious is Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the short, actually, there's 2 characters. There's Brimstone and Fearform. And Brimstone is sort of that demonic slasher, so kind of that Hellraiser type. We did some great makeup, thanks to Reagan Gannis, who was my makeup artist, to kind of do this cool volcanic look. And then our colorist, Brian De Herrera Schneering, he did this awesome effect where like the orange that was meant to kind of look like almost like flowing lava underneath her skin. He did a great job of like making that glow a little bit too. But those 2 carry all the dialogue with the therapist. Otherwise, it's just reactions or grunts or breathing exercises, things like that. So, I initially was going to put in more talky type slashers, but I kind of enjoyed the challenge of what happens if, 3 out of your 5 group members don't even talk. And it just fit the genre.
Yeah.
So what the heck, let's do it. Let's try. And sure enough, they became my favorite characters. So
This is a fantastic question. Thanks, Chris, for asking it. What would Thomas' dream project be if a studio gave him an unlimited budget?
yeah. I have a Godzilla trilogy that is outlined and partially written. If you can't tell from all this, I've got tons of kaiju. But I've been a Godzilla fan since I was a kid. I remember watching Godzilla versus Megalon, Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla from the Showa era, which is like their 50s to the 70s, and also Godzilla 1985. And so I've had a concept for a Godzilla trilogy that would be pretty epic. That, man, if I could ever do it, that'd be fantastic. There's a lot of stars that have to align, and a lot of people that I don't know that I would have to meet and get approval from to get going. But that would be the dream, like working on someone like another property besides something I write. Does that make sense?
So. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You would definitely need to hire a Japanese interpreter, because I know the franchise is Japanese, so you would need some permissions and some negotiations in Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. Or I would have to integrate into like the MonsterVerse with Legendary and stuff like that too, which is kind of its own big monster that's moving on its own right now, because they're on movie number 5 now that's coming out next year with Supernova. So
yeah. Interesting. So I know horror and comedy are both very like, they kind of subvert your expectation. How do you balance fright with funny without losing the tension, and what makes a horror story work?
Yeah, for me, it's making sure that you never sacrifice a scare just to put a joke in, and vice versa. Like if there's a funny moment, it's okay to kind of let the horror breathe for a bit, just because sometimes with horror comedies, the stakes will just suddenly drop down like a tank in order for them to get a funny bit that they thought of or something like that. And I don't like that as a fan, and therefore I try not to stick to it as a writer or a director. When a moment has to be genuinely scary, cool, let's let it be scary. If we could find a cool organic moment that is funny within that, cool, let's do it. Let's embrace it. Let's get a laugh. But also just finding the right moment for when it needs to happen. So if there has been a scary moment, how do you find the levity, right? Because sometimes that's what we do as a defense mechanism, right? I know I use humor as a defense mechanism all the time. So sometimes it's after a tense moment, then you can throw the joke in to kind of let the audience know, or the reader know, it's okay now. You can breathe for a second. We're going to give you a little calm moment and a little bit of levity before we get back into it. So that's the most important thing for me, is just making sure that the moment always stays authentic to whatever the emotion needs to be, and never trying to force a laugh or a scare in just because you feel like you do. So
Yeah. And here's a question that I kind of pondered about this.
hmm.
What is it about a slasher archetype that makes it such a rich subject to parody, in kind of this psychological exploration that you're doing with the slasher sessions?
Yeah, for me, with each of the 5 slashers, I gave all of them a backstory. Like I even made like posters on our social media for like what their movies would look like if you went to a Blockbuster back in the 90s or early 2000s, right, and picked up the DVD. So in creating those stories, I also wanted to make sure I understood what caused them to become a slasher, right? Because if I understood that, then you also understand why they have to be in therapy. And so you kind of just make those connections and, just put the pieces together that way. So that way the therapist can kind of poke at the history and also explore from there and find out what commonalities there are between the slashers. So that way they either bond or get at each other's throats, sometimes verbally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So earlier on, you mentioned having, your own journey with mental health, especially during COVID and the jobs that you've mentioned. Um, how do you translate those internal personal experience into the high stakes, often supernatural environments of your book, films, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just taking some of your like strongest fears or your deepest anxieties and allowing them to kind of be told in a creative way, right? And even Jordan Peele, like with Us, that was completely based on a vision he had one time where he thought he saw a doppelganger of himself on the subway. And it just freaked him out and it threw him off. So he decided, I'm going to embrace that. I'm going to look into it, right? And there are so many horror stories that are like that, where you just find even the smallest little nugget or storytelling seed that you can plant to then just grow into something further, right? And it could be as simple as just one little moment, because I've got my first book with the Thales and the Rising Current. That was just based on interaction with my then girlfriend, now wife, in terms of a big fear that I had about our relationship that was not involved with either of us, but someone else on the outside. And I put that into the story, and obviously took a lot of liberties so that way there wasn't too much direct parallel, and then with slasher sessions, it's also just thinking about the anxieties that all of us have, because there's a lot of very simple emotions that I think we all share. Mm-hmm. And so each of the 5, you can look at that of just sort of whether it's, the fear of incompetence, the rage that you feel, or, the regret that you might have within you, and just sort of allowing one of those things to dwell within each of the slashers. So that way they have something different. But then again, within that, sometimes regret also comes with, depression and things like that too. So how can those two pieces correlate? And then how do you connect that with the characters, etc.? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And also to kind of exploring a little bit about humanity, like who are we? What am I doing here? These topics that I've often struggled with myself, like what the fuck am I doing alive? Like what is the point of this shit? Just kind of they're harsh topics to think about and kind of grapple around, but yeah, that's something that we all explore, I guess, even slashers too.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, for me, even as a kid, like movies and TV kind of helped me get emotions out and also just understand emotions a little bit better too. A lot of times if you sit down and have a long enough conversation with me about like life or just what's going on, I will at some point reference a movie or TV show that is paralleling where I am right now or what I might be dealing with.
Yeah.
It's a way for me to frame my understanding of life is through like fictional storytelling, but also just absorbing fiction as a reader, as an audience member, whatever it might be. And by doing so, that just kind of helps me almost feel a little bit more human in a way, and allows me to kind of find that creative tool for expression. So.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And aw, Chris is so lovely. I hope that happens for you someday. The true fans of franchises create the best sequels. Gareth Edwards, Rogue One, Joseph Kosinski, Top Gun Maverick, etc. I do agree with that because you love something, you grew up with something so much that you have to pay it its respects. And you're not just going to go, "Oh, I just want the money. I just want the paycheck." You kind of it's more of a labor of love rather than give me the bag. Of course, give me the bag is still
Mhm.
nice,
Oh, yeah.
but you're gonna care a little bit more about it when it means something to you.
Yep, and I totally agree with Rogue One. That's the best of the Disney era movies, in my opinion. So, yeah, he did a phenomenal job. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same thing like with the Godzilla franchise. Like if I were given the reins to it, man, I would want to make sure that every monster that I have included in the story over the three movies um, has a purpose for being there. You know, there's no like monster that I have in there. It's just like, I don't know, let's just put this one in because I need something there,
Yeah.
or this would be a good cheap pop, you know, kind of thing for a cameo. I think with a lot of
Yeah.
established franchises, that's something we're very guilty of, especially in the multiverse era. You know, with fandoms where it's just like let's vomit as many characters and cameos in as possible just to get the cheap pop. I think, as they would say in the wrestling terms. So,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
I'm a wrestling fanatic, so
yeah.
I know the word pop.
Yep, yeah, cheap pop. It's basically, yeah. Mick Foley, I think, always talks about cheap pops for faces, and it's when you're in the city, you just say, like, "And it's great to be here in Denver, Colorado." You know, cue the cheers, right? So,
Yes, yes. Oh man, I watched a couple of weeks ago I watched a mask versus mask match in Lucha Libre AAA.
hmm.
Man, that pop in that stadium, whoo,
Was that
very
that
good.
was the Battle of the Grande Americanos, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I still haven't watched it, but like I keep hearing people hype it up, and everything on social was basically just saying it was one of the best
Hype.
wrestling matches in a long time. So,
Yeah, it's the best I've seen in probably 10 years,
yeah,
if not more.
oh, yeah. I'll let you know when I finally get around to watching it. So,
Right, right. So getting back a little bit
sure.
into some of the stuff that you've worked on, we we spent time on our first on the first episode on the channel, we talked a little bit about classic horror tropes. If
Mhm.
you had to drop the crew of Thales into a classic gothic horror scenario like a haunted abandoned submarine or underwater structure with the monster in the vents,
Mhm.
how do you think your character's scientific mindset would hold up against the supernatural? And what core tropes do you think they would perish to?
Gotcha. Yeah, see, immediately I started going to like Creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that, you know, but I know that's not like supernatural, but they would do great in that situation because they would know just to get out because the only reason it's attacking is because they came into its territory. Um,
Mhm.
the creature was not the
Yeah.
villain, despite how it's presented. But like
Right.
supernatural issue, I think could be kind of tough because the captain of the Thales is a pretty big older dude, and he's got a lot of like faith crisis going on as a character. So I think he would probably have a lot of issues. And then we also have some corporate types in there, so they would have a hard time. And then there's some engineers that are in there
Mhm.
because when I wrote the book, I basically just tried to put together like who would have to be in the station that's underneath the water trying to capture the power of the ocean currents. You know, who would you need to put in there? And then I sort of fleshed out the main characters from there. So I think we'd have a lot of scientific minds that would probably start feeling a little bit torn because their life is very scientifically based and engineering based. And so I think if there was something actually gothic or supernatural occurring, it would question a lot of their background and a lot of what they know. So,
Yeah, I like that answer.
yeah.
So, in this book, you place your characters in one of the most hostile environments imaginable,
Yep.
hundreds of meters below sea level. What is it about the isolation of the deep ocean that makes it such an effective setting for a thriller? And does it require a different kind of fear than your horror comedy work that you've done?
For sure, it's more of that like atmospheric tension and more of a thrilling atmosphere as opposed to like a terrifying murderers on my right behind me kind of scare.
Mm.
And the genesis for this story was that I wanted some sort of isolated story, like about survival, and I knew I wanted it in the ocean just because I love the water. Anytime I'm on the ocean or in water, I'm a very calm dude, and so it's just something I wanted to tell the story of. And the thing is that we know so little about the surface of our, the deeper surfaces of our ocean. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about parts of our own ocean, which is insane. And I also was trying to figure out a reason to put them there. And so part of the reason is I looked at like what was going on with science and technology. And when I found out they were starting to put submerged turbine blades down there to like capture the currents, I'm like, okay, cool. There we go. We got our premise. But it's really an atmosphere to kind of force all of the characters into a claustrophobic environment to sort of face themselves. It's as much of a man versus nature, man versus technology, it is man versus self kind of narrative, in the sense that all the characters that are down there have a reason that they left the surface of and went into the bottom of the ocean, right? Some are trying to escape past trauma. Some are looking for the thrill, and exploring that within the characters kind of gave good motivations to create that atmosphere that built that tension. And because it's very similar to space in the sense that one mistake and you're dead. It doesn't take much to completely cause a problem, especially when you're deep down in the ocean, when you're dealing with hundreds of pounds of pressure per square inch. So as a result, if anything gives, it's going to give quick, and it's going to then cause everything else to kind of fall apart from there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're building a horror narrative, do you start with a scare or a specific emotion you want the audience to walk away with?
It depends on where I'm at in the story. A lot of times when I'm putting together an idea, I will just outline it on index cards. That's one of the ways I'm like old school writer. I've got 4 panels of corkboard over here on my left. So that way I can kind of figure out the flow of the story. But the biggest thing when I know that I'm ready to write something, whether it's a screenplay, a book, a short story, play, whatever, is I have to think of the ending and what I want either the reader or the audience to walk away with feeling, whether that's just a tremendous sense of joy or a sense of like, okay, yeah, maybe life can be better and we can hold on to hope and it's okay to do that. Whatever I want them to sort of think in the last minute or the last page. Until I get that, I won't really work on a story. But then once I kind of understand the theme and where I want to guide them, then I can kind of work everything together. And then from there, I will think of specific moments, specific scares. And a lot of times I will also create a playlist to listen to. And I'll pick even specific scores or musical moments that copy that moment, as close as I can get. So that way I can just listen to it while I'm writing it, and I can just live in that moment, whether it's a really heavily emotional moment where the characters are like just bearing their all, or if it's a tense moment, and things like that. Sometimes, my wife or kids will hear me just listen to like one song over and over and over. That's when they know I'm in the zone. So
Yeah, you got to be in the zone. Yeah.
So
how do you handle vulnerability of putting your personal struggles? Struggles. Ooh, struggles. No, what is it? What is struggles? I'm sorry. Sometimes my Mexican accent comes out. But yeah. So how do you handle that feeling of vulnerability from putting your own personal struggles into the characters that you're building?
I think it's come with time, because when you first start writing, you're very nervous about sharing your work with the world, right? Especially when it starts becoming a big project that you've put a lot of time and effort into. But the more you do it and the more you face rejection within the industry, things like that, the more you become comfortable with putting yourself out there. And the thing is, like, the more vulnerable you can get, the more honest your storytelling is, because you're putting genuine emotion from your own experiences and your own heart into your story, right? And therefore, it creates some authenticity, even if it's very loosely connected as a thread. You could still find that thread, and you could still find a way to connect those emotions in. And for me personally, too, just because I'm a cis straight white male, and I think that a lot of us need to open up more, be a lot more vulnerable with our emotions, a lot more expressive about it. I think penting it up and being a man is part of the problem, of why we have pent up anger, frustration, stuff that I've had to deal with and figured out how to work my way through it. And in working my way through that, it's become a parallel for me also making sure that like my kids see me as a vulnerable dad sometimes. They'll see me cry at a movie, or they'll see me just cry if I'm just having a tough time. And, I won't apologize for the tears, or I won't apologize for how I'm feeling. I will make sure that they understand where it's coming from, so that way they understand. And they also know that it's okay. And so I think creative outlets are a really great space for me to do that too, to let a lot of frustrations out. Like there's a script I've got that I wrote 2 weeks after the last presidential election because I just had to get some stuff out. And it was the fastest script I ever wrote. So it took a lot of cleaning up because I just kind of did like, okay, I got this premise to get this stuff out, so I'm just going to do it. And then I had to clean it up. But it's also just a place for me to let it out. So
yeah, sometimes you need to have outlets to let it out. If not, if you bottle up all that anger, all that anxiety, all that fear, you're just going to be one anxious, miserable person, and you're going to act irrationally on those feelings that you have bottled up. And that's never a good thing. So deep sea and space are best horror locations, in my opinion. In this modern day, those are the two rare places where people are completely isolated. That is very, very true.
Yep.
Any other locations, Thomas, that you would be kind of interested in putting your next characters in?
Well, I mean, there is a script, and we could get more into it, about like future projects where it's almost all single location and things like that. So I do try to put people in like interesting environments like that. And there's another script that I'm working on. I'm on 8th, 9th rewrite or something like that. I don't know. I would have to pull it up to look, but that takes place right here in Colorado, which is the state I live in. Just because I really wanted to tell a cool like story that takes place in the mountains, because the mountains here are so unique and cool, and it's where I've lived since 4th grade, and I was also born here. Then we moved all over the East Coast, but we came back, and so it's a space that I know, and therefore can put people in it. And I've had some weird, scary calls in the woods too. I've had rattlesnake encounters. There's one time we were high up in the mountains and we found a mauled elk calf carcass, and it was fresh. So that meant there was a mountain lion somewhere that was looking at us, because we could tell by the tracks and things. So it's kind of cool environment to be able to write what you know. so that's what. So it's the mountains that are like only about an hour, 2 hours, depending on traffic and where you're going. For me, from where I live, and also just single environments, I think are really challenging because it forces the characters to confront each other and themselves. So
I like that. I do like that. So, if you could bring any horror icon, living or deceased, to appear in a future book or film, who would it be and why?
well, and see, this is where I think it'd be fun with slasher sessions, especially if we made it a series, to bring actual slashers like into it, right? Like, but I don't know who it would be, because I do think it would be very fun, just because I've met a lot of the Terrifier squad, to bring Art the Clown in, just to really dive in to some therapy with him to figure out exactly what's going on, because he's obviously got some stuff to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't say much, but
yeah, I and I don't know if we'd have to also then eventually bring in some of his other cohorts, whether it's the little kid from part 2 or the woman with the messed up face. I can't remember her name, the actress's name or the character, but yeah. Anyway, so I think just because met them. Like I've got Kaylee Hayman's picture over here on my wall, and a few people have signed my Terrifier 2 like Blu-ray and things like that. I think that would be really fun. Just because I've met them and had drinks with them sometimes. So,
Aw, that sounds like so much fun.
well, it's very disarming, especially when you meet David Howard Thornton, because I
Yeah.
went to an interactive screening of Terrifier 2 in Atlanta.
Oh.
And it was one of my first horror film festivals, and it was for a short that I actually worked on as AD for another friend of mine. But during the Halloween scene, when he's got the decapitated head full of candy and he's giving it to the kids, he came out and he said, "Who wants some candy?" And he just started throwing it like to the audience. So it's just kind of funny seeing him, as a human. And he's just a nerdy guy who learned, pantomime and stuff like that. And, but then you see how quickly he can transform and turn it on as soon as he gets in. He also does those interactive, like fan photos, things like that. It's a real talent that he has to be able to just almost flick the switch is what I would say.
So. Yeah, flip a switch like that. Oh, man. So, Art the Clown on a psychiatrist's couch would be hilarious.
Yeah, just because you could get into the pantomime. God knows what he's got in his trash bag this time.
So, yeah, this time.
There's a lot of possibilities. I don't know if we could do like an entire movie of it, but for sure, a short or a good cameo, I think would be a blast. So.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. I think that'd be super fun. So you worked on everything from mockumentaries about gamers to dark horror shorts. How do these different nerd subcultures inform your writing? And do you think they share some DNA to horror?
Yeah, I mean, the three areas I write the most are like horror, comedy, and sci-fi. And I think with horror and comedy, there is a definite parallel because they are both extreme emotions, right? When you are writing a good comedy, you want people to just get a guttural laugh or reaction. And then with horror, you want the exact same, but just with fear and terror. And that's why I think like John Krasinski with A Quiet Place and Jordan Peele with Get Out, they translated over from doing The Office and Key and Peele, the sketch show, to doing these incredibly influential horror films with ease. And it's because they understand how to draw the emotion out from the audience in a very meaningful way. They just shift the focus. They shift the focus from, I'm going to make you laugh, to I'm going to freak the hell out of you. So, and for that, it's also just sort of, the other part of it too is just understanding the genre. I started out writing plays and film. And so you have to kind of learn the nuances of different formats, different genres. So when I decided to write my first sci-fi book, I joined a writer's group, and the first feedback was like, the character seems so real, the dialogue is great, I don't understand what's happening. And it's because I hadn't read enough science fiction to understand how to really explain the situation. And when you're doing films and plays, a lot of it's basic because you figure that out during the rehearsal and production process. With a book, you have to put the process in the reader's mind. And therefore, I had to learn how to explain myself a little bit better. So it's that weird combination of like making sure that you're well-versed in whatever genre you're diving into, and simultaneously also just going for it and trying to make sure whatever emotion you're trying to convey to the audience, they feel it wholeheartedly, right? Or as sincerely as possible. So.
Yeah, I would say that is very accurate. What's the most out there or challenging production request you've ever had to execute while telling a story, and how did you make it work?
Yeah, I mean, I've got examples in both advertising worlds, because that's how I often pay the bills, is marketing and advertising, video production, stuff like that. I think in narrative side, it has to be on a short called Demon for Hire that I worked on as AD. And that was a skeleton crew. We had a few PAs. We had one person who ran both sound and lighting, and then our DP, Sophia Coppola, and her partner, Mike Epstein, not related to the other Epsteins. He's a great guy. They do a lot of great horror films. and a lot of genre work. But so as a result, there was a lot of additional skills as needed on that skeleton crew. And because there is a possessed character who has tentacles come up, we didn't have anyone because it was getting really late at night. We actually saw the sun come up that day. So I ended up being the tentacle operator. And it's just this nasty tentacle that has eyeballs and mouths on it all over the place. And because we wanted multiple tentacles, we had to kind of shoot it 4 times. So that way they could like scope out each of the tentacles and then put it behind the possessed character. And so it was just really fun saying, yes, I was the assistant director and tentacle operator. So, and there's a very funny risque picture of me basically posing with the tentacle in Burt Reynolds, like laying down on the concrete because I had to lay down for the whole thing on a concrete patio while I was just sitting here with the tentacle, doing this, and they'd say,
God.
"Over your left, okay, come down, now go up. That was too fast," that kind of stuff. So, it was a blast. And then on the advertising side, there was one time we wanted to do Yule log for our holiday card for the business, but the copywriter I was working with, who's also now my best friend, we kept in touch after we both left the agency, but came up with a mule log. So I had to find a mule that was okay wearing a Santa hat for that.
No.
So that was just one of those things that the art director, Matt, and my best friend, Tyler, came up to me. He's like, "Hey, we need to film this in like a couple weeks. Do you think you could find a mule that could wear a Santa hat?" And I'm like, "Why not? Let's figure it out." And sure enough, we did. We found a really great Shriners group. Those guys who do those parades with the hats.
Yeah.
They had a couple mules that, and they said, "We've got one that I think will be great." So they put some feed down. That way it would go near the log that we wanted it near. And we just let it eat for a little bit and walk away. And then bam, we had our mule log. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. If you were going to write slasher sessions for a classic monster, so Dracula, Creature of the Black Lagoon, etc., what do you think the biggest breakthrough in therapy would be?
I mean, gosh, there would have to be different ones for each one, because like Frankenstein's monster, I would want him to know that he's enough and he's okay as he is, right? Because that's the big issue that he faces. Whereas the Invisible Man, if we're talking about the original Universal Invisible Man, that dude needs an ego check, because his ego gets so inflated, he literally crashes a train just to prove a point, if I remember right. And Dracula, I mean, you've got years of just issues built up.
Yeah.
And his whole trove of female vampires that he's got with him. I think you'd have to try to get a breakthrough in terms of just breaking tradition, man. And you gotta step away from the way things should be, or the way things have been, and maybe embrace what it could be now, in a new life. So
I like that. So as we kind of start wrapping up the show, what is one story or horror concept you haven't tackled yet that keeps you up at night?
That keeps me up at night. I just came up with an idea. I haven't even done the index cards yet. Like, it's just like the idea that I actually had to get up to write it down. Because sometimes if I wake up in the middle of the night and an idea hits me, if I don't log it, I can't go back. It's hard for me to go back to sleep. So I find that if I just log it, even just a little note in my phone real quick, or just write something down to leave it for myself the next morning. But I thought of a really good horror kind of action thriller that deals with corporate acquisitions and mergers, because a lot of that's happening right now and people are losing jobs left and right. What would happen if 2 corporations merged, but instead of just laying people off traditionally, they lock the office down and make everyone kill each other for job roles and survival? I think that could be a good reflection of our current capitalistic society, and the parallels to some of the big mergers that are going on, like the Paramount Warner Brothers Netflix thing, that's estimated to kill a ton of jobs in Hollywood. And cause a lot of real people some real problems. I think it could be a good way to let us all express a little bit of that. So
A little bit of that angst, yeah, definitely. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? What evil are you willing to do to keep your corporate job?
yep.
I think that's a good, I think that's a good thing that you have going there, and I hope you can, write it to your heart's content.
Yeah.
So, what project or goal is next on your horizon?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm working on, and I've just kind of shifted on this, is trying to work on a couple different projects. One is a DIY feature film that we can make with a lot of my actors and crew that are right here in Colorado for a micro budget. Just because we don't have an in with Hollywood. And if you don't have an in, you have to make one for yourself. I think we're seeing a lot of that this year between Iron Lung, Backrooms, Obsession. A lot of these paths are getting carved of their own making, right? And then Hollywood comes to them. And so that one is a really cool sci-fi script that I wrote, and is actually the one I talked about that I wrote right after the right after the election, and figured that out. The other one is involving a kaiju, because I love them, and I eventually want to do more kaiju movies. But that one's going to take a lot more effort. So I've done some early sketches of those. We did a script reading with a big group of cast up at Wolf Love Studios, which is one right here in the Denver metro area. They're a great studio and a great partner. So those are the two big ones. It's called Summons and then Lost with You and a Kaiju are the two feature films that I'm working on. And then simultaneously, we're also packaging up Slasher Sessions to pitch as a streaming series and hopefully find some financiers or production partners that can work with us on that. Just because we want to bring in more slashers and a lot more mayhem and violence. So, but
I like that.
Practical effects and murder on screen takes a lot of very talented people that we want to make sure get paid right. So
yeah, money, the root of all evil, but the root of getting, unfortunately, a lot of big things done too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great theme, very much needed for today's time. I think so too. I was discussing this on my very first show that They Live is still relevant to today's time, and it shouldn't be, but it's still very much relatable, even more so, I think.
Yep. No, I had a rough time watching It's a Wonderful Life this holiday season because there's a line that Jimmy Stewart has in that where he says, "Do you have an idea how long it takes for a working man to save up $5,000?" And I'm like, this movie was made in 1946, and it is just as relevant. And honestly, I think $5,000 is still a very difficult amount for most people to save up right now. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like, how much do you have in your bank account? I don't know, a penny maybe. Great interview. Best of luck, Thomas. You're the horror creator that is very easy to root for, and I will be doing just that. Aww.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I try my best. I'm a very empathetic, sincere human. So I try to bring that out on the page and on the screen. So whatever I might be doing.
Aw. So what books are you currently writing, or what are you publishing like pretty soon here that people can check out?
So book-wise, my second novel, Make Wait, which is, oh my gosh. Oh yeah, right up there by my Golden Godzilla. I need to republish that. I had a traditional publishing contract, but unfortunately the publisher went out during COVID. So I need to get that out. The other thing that's coming very soon is a series of short films that we've made. We filmed these late last year and early this year, but I am just now getting around to editing them because my life has just been absolute chaos with a lot of marketing work. And we just launched the Colorado 150 Film Festival, which is celebrating 150 years of Colorado as a state, but we're doing that through film. It's showing Colorado films all over the state. Yeah, it's a blast. We've been able to work with incredible groups like Colorado Film and Video Association, the Women in Film Colorado, and a lot of independent theaters. We're not showing in any chains either. But I digress. But I was so busy that I am just now getting to these shorts. And so those are going to kind of start showing up on our social channels for my production company and also on my own, which is Thomas A. Fowler and Gracious Monsters, which is my production company's name. So
Gracious Monsters.
Because like I said, I pay the bills through advertising. So there's a couple spoof commercials in there that are me definitely making fun of the industry that I worked in for over a decade. But also just some good horrors, and it ranges from genuine, authentic horror shorts to absurd. I gave birth to a demon baby in one of them, so because in this little scenario, the male gets pregnant, and it goes from like absurd Evil Dead horror comedy to really sincere horror that based on some real fears and things like that too.
Gracious Monsters. Let me drop the link.
Yeah, if you just go to like thomasafowler.com or graciousmonsters.com, those will get you kind of in the web of social media websites that I've built. So
I also dropped your Instagram real quick. And then the Instagram does have the link. So guys, check it out. See all the cool stuff that Thomas is working on. Whoa, that is not the right link. My bad.
Where did it send you?
It was like the super long link to Instagram. But gotcha. it was supposed to be this one. Okay. Nice, short, sweet, small. Not that giganormous Instagram that is going to send you to graciousmonsters.com.
Yeah.
But
exactly. Like I said, you just put in graciousmonsters.com, slashersessions.com or thomasafowler.com. You'll kind of get put into the feed things that I have available, whether it's social media or the websites. So
nice. Thank you so much. So my last and final question, so we can wrap things up nicely. Sure. If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring independent horror filmmakers or writers, what would it be?
Just go. I think a lot of people who are creative are often dealing with emotions saying you're not good enough or you need to learn more. The best thing to learn is doing. And so even if it's just being a PA on a set or writing something that you won't ever see the light of day. I've got a god-awful one-act play that I wrote as my first one-act play, and my theater teacher from high school still has it, Mrs. Queen. It's not good, but the thing is, like, that's how you learn, and that's how you also learn how sets work and how people pull off effects. So just don't worry about it being perfect. Worry about doing it, because there's always a reason for you to have an obstacle. There's always going to be something in the way, whether it's the bills you have to pay, certain life circumstances. Like even now, I'm only working part-time marketing to pay the bills, so I'm able to start focusing more on my filmmaking career. That took years of effort to get to the point that I'm at as a senior producer in advertising and a content and production director, to be able to give myself a paying wage that I only have to work part-time. It took years of sacrifice for me to even get there. And so that gives me even just a few hours that I squeeze in between dropping my kids off and picking them up at school, right? So just get going and find a good balance for yourself. And even if that's just writing one page down or, drawing some creatures or whatever you want to do, just get started, because once you get started, the wheels start moving. And once the wheels move, it's a lot easier to keep the vehicle going. So
and you learn as you go.
Too. I found that keeping myself in good physical shape and like mental shape is crucial, because it keeps me from getting writer's block. It keeps me in a better mood, so that way I have a positive spiral as opposed to a negative. So just take care of yourself in every way, shape, and form too.
Nice. I really like that. Well, Thomas, it has been awesome getting to be able to connect with you and kind of talk about all the fun stuff you're doing. Again, it was wonderful to be able to talk. Hey, and if you ever want to come on the channel and be a guest and just talk about Godzilla, we can review -1. There's tons of Godzilla movies.
Yep. Well, -0, I would think, comes out this November. So maybe we could even do like a real fresh out of the theater kind of review or something like that.
Ooh, yeah. With the expert, with the kaiju expert.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and thank you so much for the invitation to bring me on. It's a blast, and yeah, anytime you need me, just send out the signal. I'll be here. So
I'll send the Thomas A. Fowler bat signal.
yeah, exactly. It'll be my Gracious Monsters logo because I'm actually about to launch a rebrand or like the full brand. So I've actually got an artist named Leo Gonzalez who's designing a kaiju for our Gracious Monsters logo. So you just have to flash that logo up of our Gracious Monsters kaiju, and I'll be there. So,
oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. See you guys next week, and I hope you guys have a good evening. Bye bye.
Hello, boils and ghouls. It's your old pal, John Kusier, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to thank you for listening.